Welcome to episode 177 of the Corner of Knit and Tea. My name's Laura. I'm also known as Fluffy K on Ravelry, Fluffy Kira on Instagram and Twitter. I blog over at thecornerofknitandtea.com, and that's where this episode and every episode show notes will be. I have an Etsy shop called The Corner of Knit and Tea, where I sell my hand-spun yarns, and we have a Ravelry group also called The Corner of Knit and Tea. If you haven't come and joined us, please do. I have an idea for another make-along, so I'm going to pitch that a little bit later in the podcast, and if you're interested, then we'll start a thread and get it going. So hi, how are you? It is Sunday, April 1st. No April Fool's pranks on this podcast. I don't care for them. So I promise I won't be giving you any of them. If you celebrate Easter, happy Easter. I hope you are enjoying your weekend with your family. We are having a quiet weekend, well, sort of a quiet weekend here. Wes went to attend a family funeral, so he is still gone. He'll be back in probably a couple of hours. The last 2 days I have spent at Ply Away, and since I have no real spinning to show, I will call that the spinning section today. So I will talk about that. It is, well, okay, a few things. It has been a doozy of a week, y'all. I had some personal stuff happen this week that I am not ready to talk about yet, but I did not get a lot of knitting done. Basically, I came home each night too fried to knit. The couple of times when I tried to pick up my knitting, I messed things up. So I did some knitting sort of towards the latter half of the week, so I have a little something to show you, but not a ton. And I hope I will be able to talk about that more soon, but we will see. So, the podcast is going to be a little light on some things and a little heavy on others, so not quite a normal podcast, but we will see how it goes. For tea today, I am drinking Downton Abbey Christmas Blend. I know, kind of bizarre, April 1st, spring. The weather doesn't know it's spring outside. Last time I checked the temperature, it is 28 degrees outside, and we are supposed to get snow today. I ran out quickly and did a market run, so we have groceries for the week, and I'm planning on staying inside in my comfy clothes, they're pseudo pajamas, for the rest of the day. And I wanted a warm and cozy tea, so I picked my favorite Downton Christmas Blend. You have heard, if you are not new to the podcast, you have heard me talk about this before. It is a black tea with mulling spices. It is one of my favorites. And I don't necessarily hold myself to Christmas time. I am drinking it today in my National World War I Museum commemorative mug, the Poppies. The museum is here in Kansas City, and it is quite a treasure, and I really wanted the Poppy mug. So I am staying cozy and warm today with my tea. And there is a review of the tea on my website if you would like to check it out. It is a Republic of Tea offering. Sadly, and I have no inside knowledge to this, so please don't take this as gospel, now that Downton Abbey is over, I don't know how many more years they'll continue to produce the tea. I hope for a while. I have a couple cans stashed around the house, so if it is something you are interested in, I would say try it sooner rather than later, because I expect as new shows come and go, it may not stick around. That's just, like I said, no true knowledge. So, let's get started with the knits. The first thing that I did was, I believe, last weekend, Sunday, after I talked to you, I finished my first cherry blossom sock. I don't think I showed this on the podcast. It's not in the show notes. After this week, my memory is shot, so I can't really tell you. If I showed it, please bear with me. This is my first cherry blossom sock. And now I'm thinking maybe I did show this. I can't remember. This is a new yarn to me H&M Comfort Sock and Wool, and I had to buy it from a store in Canada. It is a German sock wool, and I did not find it for sale at any US retailers. I first saw it when someone I follow on Instagram who lives overseas was using it. It is this lovely stripy colorway, and this is called Cherry Blossom. I used some contrasting yarn that I had. It's some Woolly Wonka fibers, and I cannot remember, it's one of her sock bases for the heel, and I did David Schultz's toe up sock recipe, which is basically a toe up with a gusset and heel flap. I find the gusset and heel flap fit me the best, and I used my Addy flexi flips for this, and I will say the jury is still out on those. I do not like them as much as I like my DPNs, but I did love them when I was doing the gusset and the heel flap, because that always has so many stitches that I always find it difficult with my DPNs, because I actually use pretty short DPNs. Usually mine are 5 or 6 inches, and by the time I get all the gusset stitches on there, it's a lot for a DPN. So I did enjoy the flexi flips around the heel, which is exactly where I thought I would. I'm okay with them. They're not my favorite though. So I will definitely knit the other sock on the same needles because I don't want to worry about gauge issues, and I don't know whether I'll use them in the future or not. We'll just have to see. So those are my cherry blossom socks, or at least one half of them. I need to cast on for the second one already. I thought I would get it done this week, but I did not. It will be a good roundy project, and actually, frankly, if I cast it on, it would probably have been a perfect project for this week because I wouldn't have had to pay attention to anything. So that is my first, I guess it's a half-finished object, but I don't like calling things hose. It doesn't amuse me. So my first sock. The other 2 projects on the needles are things that you saw last week. I'm just in the middle of a bunch of WIPs. I have Miles' sweater, and this is looking good. I was almost finished with the body when I talked to you last week. So I did finish the body. I did the ribbing around the bottom. It's all scrunched up because it's been in my project bag. And then I babysat for a really sweet little boy on Thursday night, and he fell asleep very early. And so I got a good chunk of the sleeve done, of the first sleeve. I probably have another like half an inch or an inch to go before the cuff. So I might actually work on this evening and see if I can bang out the first sleeve, and then I will just need the second sleeve, and to weave in ends, everything else is already taken care of. So that is Miles. It'll be his 2nd birthday sweater, so I'm like super early, but I had this beautiful skein and I was just trying to use up some stash and think up some fun kind of, this was supposed to be an instant gratification project. It has taken me a little longer than normal because of what has been going on, but it's still pretty instant gratification because in just a week or 2 I have banged out almost a full sweater for a little person. So this will wait a little bit to go to him. His 2nd birthday isn't till October. Yes, I'm way ahead of time, but I do birthday sweaters for both kids whose birthdays are in October, plus holiday knits, plus their fall knits. So I do a lot of gifting in the end of the year, so I prefer to try and work ahead a little bit so that I'm not trying to come up with it all in the last couple months. So I've given some thoughts to a sweater for Roxy. I may purchase a sweater quantity of yarn at the next event that I'm going to attend, and we'll just have to see. But this is Miles' sweater. The pattern is Simon and Simonetta, and it is by Elena Nodell, who sadly passed away this year, but she has a number of lovely children's patterns. That's primarily what she designed for. She also had a yarn company. I don't believe the yarn company is still going, but the patterns are still available on Ravelry, and I like to think that I presume the funds generated by these are going to her husband and daughter, and so I like to think that I'm helping out when I use her patterns. So that is for Miles, and the yarn was Miss Babs' Yowza. It was a mislabeled skein. It was a Babette skein, and I think it is shaken not stirred, but I'm not sure. So that's all the details I think I can fit into that project. So that is the 2nd project on the needles. Hoping maybe I'll finish that this week. We'll just have to see how the week goes. It's probably going to be a little bit unpredictable, so gonna wait and see and kind of try and go with the flow. That's not really who I am, but we're gonna try it. Next up on the needles is my Wolf River. I talked about this last week. This is a lacy, oversized kind of boyfriend sweater kind of pullover, and I talked about the modifications I was making. I talked about a whole variety of things last week. I did get through a few more repeats this week. The pattern is called to be pieced. I actually converted it to be knit in the round, and I am working my way up from the body basically to the arm armpits, like I said last week, to the underarm, and then I will split for front and back. It looks quite large, and I'm a little bit nervous about that, but when I hold it up to me, it doesn't look crazy large, and it is supposed to be oversized. So we're going to see how this goes. I'm making the size that would be recommended for me. I believe I am on gauge. If it doesn't fit me, I'm just going to donate it. I'm not terribly worked up about this one, but I am enjoying the knitting of it. This was the one that I kept picking up and screwing up. I could not deal with the lace repeats when I couldn't pay attention to anything. So I did have to pull back a little bit, but it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 repeats in, and I don't remember how many repeats I'm supposed to go. I still have a ways to go. It is kind of a, it's not a super long sweater. I don't want to say it's cropped because it's really not, but it's definitely like a waist length sweater as opposed to a hip length sweater. And I was thinking about adding a little bit more, but I also don't know how much yarn I will have left over. So I can't decide. What I was thinking what I might do is add 1 extra pattern repeat to whatever it says to knit to, and then move on from there. So I might try that. We'll see. This will take me a little bit longer, I'm sure, because it is a full-size sweater. It is in bulky weight, so it's knitting up pretty quickly, but I'm still sure that it will take me a little bit to figure out exactly what I want from this. So this is the Wolf River by Melissa Seshwari, and I am knitting it in, it is the Cloudborn yarn. I don't think I have the label here. It is the Craftsy House Blend yarn. It is called Wool Twist, Bulky Wool Twist, and I cannot find it on their site. I don't know if maybe they were closing it out in these pattern kits, or if it was just because it doesn't really say out of stock, like it might be coming back. I don't know. I went looking for it last week because I was trying to link it in the show notes, and I didn't see it there. I purchased this as a kit back in October, and it was on deep discount. I want to say I paid between $30 and $40 for the sweater kit, if even that. So it will not be a super expensive sweater, but I thought it would be nice to try the yarn. The yarn is not super soft, but it is not super rough either. And since it is a lacy sweater, I would always have to wear something underneath it anyway. So I'm not really concerned about that. And I do find it enjoyable to work with. The other thing is that Cloudborn guarantees that there is no variance in dye lots. I can't decide if I believe that that's really true or not, because for the most part, commercial yarns kind of work that way, but still you always want to buy enough for your project so that you don't have to buy later. That said, I'm not alternating skeins because they say that they're good, and they sent me half a bag that looks like it's all the same dye lot. So I'm not alternating skeins, and I am already into the second skein, and I don't see any lines in my knitting. Unfortunate, like I did the last time when I didn't alternate skeins. So I am enjoying that and hoping that that is true, and we will see what this looks like. So that is my Wolf River. I also think this is an instant gratification knit because it's bulky, so we'll see. So that pretty much ends the knitting section, and I was starting to think about, because it's a new month, what I want to accomplish this month. And mostly what I was thinking about is that I have a ton of WIPs. I showed you I have the 2 sweaters and the socks. I also have another sweater that is in partial stages of completion. I started that a while ago. It is a lace weight sweater, and it would be good for this time of year soon, not today. It is a kind of a heavy lace weight lacy cardigan. I envisioned wearing it to work in the spring and summer months, like when the air conditioning was on or when it might be cool. So it would be a good time to finish that. I have a scarf that I started a while ago that I'm finding kind of a chore to knit. It's something where I really want the finished object, and the knit itself is pretty boring. So I haven't decided exactly what I'm going to do about that. And I have my mom's blanket. So that is a lot more WIPs than I usually have going at one time, and I guess I'm not calling them all WIPs in the sense that I'm not touching them all every week, but they are all sitting and staring at me. So what I was kind of thinking is, because people have been asking me when I'm going to do the next knit along, which it's not going to be a knit only, but I call them that. Basically, it's a make along. It is a knit, spin, sew, crochet, whatever you have. What I was thinking is that maybe April should be WIP month, and the rules would be super, super simple. It would be, if it's on your needles, it's a WIP. I don't really care how much stuff is left in it, because the whole point is to get the WIPs off the needles. So if you have 3 rows that you haven't finished forever, finish it. I don't know how you feel about this, because I also do Stash Dash, which will start later in May, and I know a lot of people leave a lot of their projects to be finished in late May or early June to count towards Stash Dash. So if that is your bag, then I guess maybe you won't want to participate in this, because the whole point of this would be to finish WIPs, and I would say you can post your finished WIP in a finished objects thread for a chance to win some prizes by random number generator, but you actually have to finish something this month to be eligible for prizes. And then every object you finish, obviously 2 socks count as a pair, 2 mittens, if it comes in a pair, they need to be a pair, but everything you finish would count for an entry. So I don't know how you feel about that. Leave me a message on this video, or respond in the episode thread on Ravelry, and let me know if you're interested. If you are, because I have like 5 or 6 WIPs that I would love to finish this month, and I'm going to try to keep myself from casting on anything new this month, and just really concentrate on finishing some things, because I'm working on some things that I really like right now, and I would really like to finish them and get to wear them or gift them or use them. That said, I am making one exception for this month, and that is that Lisa Much of Northbound Knitting is hosting a 2-month knit along or make along in her group, and you need to, I can't remember exactly what the rules are, whether you have to use her yarn or her pattern. I think it's either one or the other. Like, it has to be something Northbound Knitting related. And she has a ton of patterns out if you're interested in making her patterns. And she has a yarn shop, and she also sells through a variety of other retailers. And what I was thinking is, a while ago, I bought this cute little sock set. I bought it from Simply Socks. It is Northbound Knitting. It is her superwash merino nylon fingering, 75% superwash merino, 25% nylon, and it comes with a contrast color for the matching color for the heels and toes, and the colorway is Rumpus, and the small one is Oleander. And it is pink and purple and almost a little bit neon in spots. And I want to knit a pair of socks out of these, and what's more, I might even want to knit a pair of socks for my mini-me out of these. So my plan is to try and finish up the cherry blossom socks, and as soon as I finish up the cherry blossom socks, I can cast on for this one. Like I said, this is going to be my only cast on this month, but I really wanted to participate in this. I really like Lisa, and when I saw she has a million different sock sets, like I said, she retails through Simply Socks. She also has her own website. Is it on here? It's northboundknitting.com. She is in Canada, so if you are concerned about foreign exchange or any of those kinds of things, you can certainly buy them at a US retailer, or if you want to go through her directly. What happened was she posted that new sock sets were up at Simply Socks, and she posted a photo of this one, and I was like, I want that one, that colorway. So I went to Simply Socks and ordered it rather than ordering directly from her. But she has a whole variety, and not all of them are this bright. So if you are interested, I have not knit with her sock yarn before, but it is beautiful. It's on the thin side because it's 460 yards to 100 grams. So it's on the finer side, probably size 0s on these. But I'm super excited, and I can't decide if I'm going to do some kind of pattern or if I'm just going to do super plain. If I do a pattern, it might be, well, maybe I'll do one of Mina's patterns from one of her sock clubs. Just something a little simple on the front of the sock, just to see. Anyway, so that is the only cast on. Otherwise, April is going to be about WIPs for me, and I'm going to see how many of these I can crank out. I'm obviously not eligible for prizes, but if you want to do WIP April with me, like I said, please leave a message on this video or in the episode thread, and I will start a thread and get it going if a few people are interested. So that concludes the knitting segment. Let's take a sip of tea and then talk about spinning. Last week I showed you a braid, didn't even spin it, didn't touch it. So there will be no spinning content. What I will replace it with is a little talk about Ply Away. If you are a spinner, I'll just give this real brief intro. If you are a spinner or if you are not a spinner, there is a spinning magazine that has been around for 4 or 5 years now called Ply. It is produced by J.C. Boggs Faulkner, who is a spinning instructor, and she has written some books, and she also has spinning and DVDs. Her primary area when she was teaching was very technical spinning, and in particular learning how to do some interesting creative things. A lot of people call it art yarn, but it actually requires quite a bit of technique. So she is a super, super, super technical spinner. She produces a lovely spinning magazine. It is a work of art. It is on heavier bond paper. It is beautiful photography, beautifully produced. It comes out quarterly. If you have not checked it out and you are a spinner or are interested in spinning, I would definitely recommend it. Each year has a general theme, and then each issue has a theme, and there are articles about spinning, on how to spin using particular materials or techniques, and then there are a few patterns that you can make with your hand-spun yarn. This is the 3rd year that JC decided to do a convention, and she calls it Ply Away. And JC is actually a resident of Kansas City. So I am super lucky in that she holds the event in my hometown, and I get to go every year because it is not, I have to pay registration to take classes, obviously, but I don't have to pay for travel or accommodations. So I consider myself very, very lucky to have such a wonderful event here. Like I said, this is the 3rd year. It is approximately a week-long spinning retreat. This year's retreat ran from Tuesday through Saturday. At the front end, usually there are a bunch of either 1-day or 2-day classes. Teachers come from around the world, renowned experts. You can look back, I have previous episodes where I talked about the previous 2 years of Ply. So this year I registered to take 2 classes. On Friday morning, I took a class with Stephanie Gostad, and it was called Getting the Best from Your Wheel. I didn't know exactly what the course was going to be about. I assumed that it would be a class about making adjustments to your wheel to improve your spinning performance, which for the most part, that's what it was. However, we didn't actually spin. I had expected that we'd spin and she would help us make adjustments while we were spinning. What we did do was we talked about our wheels and how they worked, and it was actually super interesting. I am not that mechanically or engineering minded, so she talked a lot about how wheels work, and the fact that the purpose of a wheel is twofold. First of all, it adds twist to fiber, because twist to fiber is what makes it stronger and what turns it into yarn, and it draws that twisted fiber onto a bobbin. So the wheel actually has to do 2 things, which is add twist and then have a mechanism for pulling the fiber onto the bobbin. Now, spinning is an art of adjusting the tension on your wheel so that it does pull from you onto the bobbin, but each spinner has sort of a different preferred setting for how much you release your yarn onto the bobbin, so you give your fiber to the wheel versus how much it takes it from you. I don't want to get too technical on this because I don't know how many of you are spinners or how many of you are interested in this, but to me it was very interesting to learn about all the different parts of the wheel and how they function, and how to kind of troubleshoot your wheel, and also how to maintain your wheel so that you get the best performance from your wheel. The most interesting thing was that she talked quite a bit about drive bands. And one of the things that she said, and this is primarily if your drive band is the band that goes around the great wheel or the master wheel on your spinning wheel, and it usually goes around something called a whorl, which is, it determines how, based on the size, it determines how much you have to treadle to make the wheel turn. And that in conjunction with your flyer and your bobbin, determine how fast you treadle, determine, based on how you treadle, how many twists are being put into your yarn for each treadle, and how quickly your yarn is being wound on, how many times your yarn is being wound round the bobbin each time you treadle. I hope I've said that all right. The most interesting thing that she said relevant to me was she talked about the condition of your drive band and how it affects your performance. Now, a lot of people have cloth, fabric, yarn, cotton thread, there I go, on their drive band. And so that wears over time and wears out. My drive band, because I have an Ashford Joy, happens to be kind of a rubberized plastic. It's something that I buy from them. And so she mentioned that when you're using a thread drive band, that you want to be sure to change your drive band every 6 months to a year, because it wears out over time and it will affect the performance and the efficiency of your wheel. And I raised my hand and said, but I've never replaced my drive band. And I've had my wheel since 2010, and it is now 2018. And she looked at my drive band and said, well, because you are not using like a cotton thread, you can't just go out and buy new thread and do your own drive band. She said, you will have to buy your drive band from Ashford. She said, but rubber over time dries out and gets brittle. And she said, eventually your drive band is going to snap. And she said, and it's probably going to happen when you're in the middle of a important project or demonstrating spinning to someone, or sometime when you least want it to happen. So I immediately, after my class, went over to the marketplace and bought myself another drive band. So, and I haven't decided if I'm going to replace it right now or if I'm going to wait for something to happen. But that was quite useful to me. So, and I knew eventually my drive band would wear out. It just never occurred to me that that is something that I should probably have in reserve and keep an eye on it, and that I might even want to switch it now. And I actually did have someone who, I don't know if she has a Joy or a Kiwi, but said to me that she replaces her drive band once every year or two, and that she finds that it makes a huge difference in her spinning. So I think I'll probably be replacing that soon. That was my first day class. My second day class was a class with Esther, who is Jazz Turtle, and she primarily spins what I would have called art yarn, but what she calls creatively spun yarns. And her difference in them is that art yarns, she defines art yarns as art and as yarns that are designed to evoke a feeling or some kind of impression, whereas creatively spun yarns are using different techniques to make your yarn look interesting or give your yarn interesting textures, but are not necessarily to make it an art piece. So I brought some of my samples from the class. Let me pull out what I did. And I will go through. We did 3 different samples. So the first thing she had us do was she had us bring a bobbin full of overspun singles. And the first thing that she had us do was she taught us how to ply using a plying thread. And the point of this was to learn different plying techniques and to play with the angles at which you ply. So typically when you ply 2 singles that you have spun and you're plying them together to make a balanced yarn, you keep equal tension on both of them and you try and ply them together evenly so that neither one holds more of the twist than the other. You are just kind of, technically you are, like I've said before, when you spin your singles in one direction, you are adding twist, and when you are plying, you are releasing just a little bit of the twist. So homework was to spin a bobbin of singles, which I did last weekend at Spinning Sunday. And then she brought plying threads, most of which were smooth cotton threads. And our task was to try and vary the angles at which we held the plying yarns together. For the most part, we kept the tension on the plying thread and allowed our singles to do interesting things around the plying thread. Now, this is how you would create different kinds of things like coils, wrapped yarn, core spun, all of those kinds of things. And you can basically move from a 90-degree angle, holding your singles out one way and your plying thread perpendicular to yourself. And then you can move the angle of your single to anything less than 90 degrees, almost to 0 degrees, so that you can vary the different kinds of things you do. So I don't know if you'll be able to see, I experimented with quite a bit of different wrappings. I have some coils where I wrapped my singles around loosely and pushed them up. I have spots where I plied evenly, more or less evenly. I'm hoping some of this is showing up. I know it's really hard to, it's really hard for me to show this. So let me see if I can do it this way. So you can maybe see that some of these are plied rather evenly and some of them have coils. Some of them are where I went back over the yarn quite a bit. Let's see if I can find a section of that. Hang on, where I kind of built it up. I guess I didn't do as much of that on this one. And then the other thing that she taught us is that you can insert things into your yarn, other kinds of fiber or non-fiber items, by kind of trapping them in between your plies and then plying around it quite a bit. So she brought in some beautiful locks and had us insert some locks into our spinning. So what I created is a few yards of not very interesting looking yarn, but it has a few interesting techniques in it. So the second sample that she had us do was she had us spin some more singles, and she gave us a bunch of solid colors. She encouraged us to pick a neutral. She had some white and black, and I picked black. And then she had all these little bumps of solid colored fiber. And what she encouraged us to do was spin a single where we changed out the colors fairly often, and we made the colors of varying lengths. And then when we plied, she encouraged us to, every time the yarn changed color, to try a different plying technique. And her point was that it just gives you a way to apply multiple textures to a yarn, and particularly when you've got both a neutral and solid color pops, it gives you an idea of how often to do it, where to do it, and it makes it really easy to see where you changed things. So I don't know how much you'll be able to see. Again, this is trying all kinds of different techniques. I used pink and purple and my green plying thread and black. So this is kind of the yarn that I came up with. I came a little closer to doing a beehive coil and learning how to anchor it at the top and the bottom so that it doesn't just run out. I did some sections where I coiled real tightly and wrapped my yarn. What else did I do? I have lots of these, just different tension of coils in different colors. I have, oh, the other thing she taught us was how to sort of have little bits of your plied yarn hanging to create almost fringe. Basically, you pull a loop out, you let it twist back on itself, and you anchor it at both ends. So then you have little fringe in your yarn. Again, I put in a few locks just for interest. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else in here that I really can show you. So it just made a sample. I mean, it's just a few yards, but it's just a sample of kind of brightly colored stuff with a bunch of different techniques. It kind of looks like stuff the dog dragged in, but you know, it was kind of interesting. And I will say that the reason I took this class in the first place is because I love, where did it go? I showed it to you. I love these little beehive coils. I want to be able to make these. I don't know why, because I don't know what I'll do with the yarn, but these are my favorite little thing. I don't know how well you can see that. Maybe that'll get a little bit better. But those are my favorite, and that was actually why I decided to take this course. So that was that one. The third sample in the class, she had us spin singles, changing fibers and spinning techniques. She tried to get us to do a little thick and thin. She tried to get us to actually spin some locks as opposed to just adding the locks in the plying process. She tried to get us to either spin locks as singles or spin it almost as kind of a core wrapped spin. And she wanted us to change fairly often. And then she had us chain ply like with like. So we had all these different sections of texture. So as you can see, like this is a section which I spun a thick and thin single in yellow, and you can see when I chain plied it that it's uneven, and you have sections that are less plied and big and fluffy and sections that are more plied. This was kind of a disaster only in the sense that it was super difficult to get it through my wheel. This was a section that I kind of tried to spin the locks, and then I tried to sort of core spin the locks a little bit, which is you sort of try and spin a single on one side of the locks as you're also allowing the locks to kind of wrap around. And I did the technique okay, but the problem is that the orifice on my wheel is not very big and that I had a lot of trouble getting this through the wheel. And then what else did I do? Mostly it was just trying to like experiment with, like, this is where I really spun more of the locks, so it's a little slubby, but it's not as bad. And then you can just see in the, like here where I got a lot of that was like a big thick and thin. And if I were spinning it as a single, I could probably use it as one of those beehive coils, but it doesn't quite work that way because this is a Navajo ply, or a chain ply. So those were my samples and what I learned at Ply Away, and I enjoyed both classes very much and learned a lot of techniques, and a lot of this is harder to do than you think it is. For me, trying to spin a thick and thin yarn is really hard because, you know, my default ends up being kind of a thin, like generally I end up with a default of about sport weight plied. So, and that's how I spin. So it's really hard actually to try and make yourself do different things. So the final thing that I will talk about is the things that I bought at Ply Away. I did get a Ply Away goodie bag. I'm not sure exactly how I did that. I don't know whether I did it by registering early. Usually you have to take one of the full day classes to get the goodie bag, so I'm not really sure how that happened. It is chock full of cool supplies and things to play with, and I am particularly interested in playing with them now that I have some of these techniques, because my thought is that I might actually spin some singles and then play with some of those things in the plying to try and add things. I will probably have to go out and buy a cone of something to use as a plying thread, but my plan was just to use my samples to fool around with them. So then the marketplace. I was really good this year. As I mentioned earlier, I have some personal uncertainty coming up, and so I did not want to spend a lot of money. So I restricted myself pretty heavily. I bought two projects, basically. In my morning class on the first day, there was a woman who was wearing this beautiful, beautiful shawl, and it was, I don't even know what the pattern was. It was fairly geometric. It was like diamonds. But it was spun out of natural colored fiber. And if you've been watching me for a while, you know I love color, and I do not normally spin with natural colored fiber. And I don't enjoy fleece processing or anything, but I really was struck by how beautiful this shawl was, and I knew I was going to the marketplace where there would be lots of natural colored fibers. So I wandered around, and I came upon the Ross Farm with their natural Shetland, and this is, it's hard to see because the light is making it crazy. It is a beautiful silvery Shetland, and I felt it, and it is so soft. It is not like any Shetland I've ever felt. Usually I find Shetland a little coarser. This is beautiful. So I bought 3 bags of this, so it's 6 ounces. To do something to ply for a shawl for myself. I'm hoping I can get at least 500 yards, if not more, out of it. I plan to try and spin this pretty thin without letting it get wiry, because I would love to do almost I would love a fingering weight shawl, but we'll see if I can get it down that thin. I may not be able to, but even with 500 yards, I should be able to do something quite nice. So that was the first thing. The second thing was that there was a new vendor there that I had not seen before, and she goes by Apothecary, and I know she has a shop online. It is called Apothecary Fabrications. That is her label, and she had this beautiful booth and all these beautiful braids. This is fine merino, and it is this kind of seafoam green minty color, and then it's got pops of orange and plum in it. And the thing that she does is everything that she dyes kind of comes with coordinating stuff. So I saw this braid and really liked it, but then I saw that she does, these are Teeswater long locks, and they are dyed in the exact same colorway as the yarn, so they coordinate. So I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with this. I'm going to apply my newfound skills from my class and try and use these locks in with this braid to create something. It probably will end up being for me because I don't know how it will turn out, but this is sort of a new exploration and foray into things. So that is what I bought. That's it. Other than the drive band, I was super proud of myself. I got a few nice things to remember the convention by, but I did not let myself go hog wild like I sometimes do. So I think that is the end of this podcast. Let me know about whether you want to do April is WIP month. Like I said, WIPs would include anything. They can include your knits, your spins, your crochets, your sewing, whatever. It's a project that you stopped in the middle of, or even that you're currently working on. And I should say, if you are the kind of person who works on one project and finishes it before starting a new project, and you have no WIPs, I kind of hate you a little, and you may totally participate. Cast something on. Once you've cast it on, it's a WIP. Finish it by the end of the month. Okay, so anything goes, maximal participation. I want as many people as can or want to participate. You have to finish it to be eligible for prizes. I have no idea what prizes will be. I do have a project bag that I bought a while ago, intending to use it as a prize. So probably a project bag, maybe some yarn, maybe a couple patterns. Finish the stuff you've got. Bonus points if you use stash, although I probably won't add that actually into this. But so, there you go. This was a long podcast. I hope you enjoyed it. I didn't realize I had so much to say, especially since I had so little knitting done. But I hope you enjoyed my recap of Ply Away, and I will sign off for now. Have a wonderful week until I see you again. Happy knitting, happy spinning, happy sipping, and I'll see you next time. Bye.